Okay, we should be back.
Yes, we are. All right, great. So Chris, we were just talking about the art supplies and things. I wanted to transition and talk about your imaginary places collection for a moment, if we can. And then I want to ask you a bit more about your story and what's coming next and things like that.
Okay, before you do that, let me show
Yeah,
you something here. Okay, let me show you a painting. This was the first painting, oil painting, that I did in 30 years after the Waterhouse exhibition. This is a copy of John William Waterhouse's Windflowers. It's not finished completely yet, but it's good enough. I want to show it to you.
yeah, go for it. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to zoom in here on the resolution. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Okay. I can see. It looks quite shiny. You've got gloss and layers in there and things, like the treatments, whatever.
Yeah, it's got a coat of
Oh,
temporary varnish on it to
okay.
protect it. But that
Mhm.
was basically my first oil painting in like 30 years, and was the first time I ever painted a human being.
Right.
Which until recently I had problems with, but I worked through that.
Okay.
Drawing human faces and bodies is not the easiest thing in the world. You really need to sit down and practice the technique to do it.
Mm.
Um, there's a method called the O'Reilly method, which I highly recommend to learn on how to set up a human face or body. Once you know how to do it, it's not that difficult. It's like I'm not a portrait painter. I couldn't paint a portrait of Carl,
Mm.
but I can do people now. And then again, part of it was seeing that exhibition and being inspired by it. It really inspired me like nothing else I can possibly explain.
Mm. So do you see yourself? It looks like one of your primary mediums has been did a lot of watercolors, you did some sketching, drawing, and then you do some oil painting, or have done some where you see
I
yourself doing more.
actually prefer doing oil painting, but right now, okay, you said I have a huge collection. Really, I need a much huger collection. Um, there's the art part of the art business, and then there's the business part of the art business, like anything else. To really get your foot into this, I think you really need to have at least 150 paintings to start with, so that way you have 30 that are good enough to show people.
Okay.
So right now I've got about 85 watercolors, maybe 90, some of which are in progress, most of which are finished. And I've got about 35 or 40 oil paintings, all of which need some work.
Okay.
The problem with oil painting is I love the results. I love the way it looks. I strongly prefer it to acrylic, but it takes time for it to dry. It's slow.
Mm.
There's ways
Okay.
you can speed it up, but it does take time. It's not like watercolor. I can go through a watercolor and I can lay down a coat of something, a wash or something, and it's dry in 45 minutes. And then I
Mm.
can do something over it. Oil color, it's a day.
Mm.
Even with the mediums that make it dry faster, it's still 24 hours before I can go back and work on the painting.
Okay.
And I'm not really a wet on wet painter. One of these people like Bob Ross, he's a wet on wet painter. He does the whole thing in 30 minutes and it's done. Which,
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
way, I love Bob Ross. It's not that I love his art so much. It's okay. It's not bad. But I love his attitude about bringing art to the masses, and anybody can do this.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that guy. And one thing you probably don't know, his shows are on endless rerun here in Germany in English. They play him every night at 12:30 or 1 a.m. They've been playing him here for 40 years, and
Wow.
everybody loves the guy. And he has made art a major hobby in this country because
Mm.
everybody watches his shows.
Awesome. Yeah. I grew up watching Bob Ross. My mom used to do some painting. I tried my hand at it, but I didn't stick with it long enough.
Well, it's like anything else. One of the things they taught us in architecture school was being an artist has nothing to do with inspiration. Being an artist is no different than being an engineer. You learn the skills, you learn the procedures, you learn how to do it, and then you do production. And you need to think about it as a 9 to 5 job where you go to work 40 or 50 hours a week and you produce. And if you do that consistently, you'll get good.
Hmm.
It's true. You will. Anything that you do 40 or 50 hours a week for decades, you'll be good at,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Well, it shows. So let me come back to my other question, then, if I may. Thank you
Yeah,
for that fascinating segue. So, in your imaginary places collection, now obviously I want to come back to the. I want to start. I want to know more about my side of the mountain painting, because on the face of it, it looks like a realistic landscape. However, it's in the imaginary places collection, so there must be a story behind it.
yeah. That was something I painted in, I think, November, December of 2018. And it was just practice landscape painting. And the inspiration for that was a book called My Side of the Mountain that I read when I was 8 or 9 years old. And there was a story about a kid in New Hampshire or Maine or Vermont or something who decided he was going to take a year off from life, and he moved into a tree in the forest, about it wasn't completely gone. I mean, he was like 10 miles from his house or 5 miles from his house, and he could go home and get a meal. True story. He really did this. And so
Okay.
this kid went out and lived in the wilderness through a winter in New Hampshire, okay,
Mm.
which is, brutal. It's minus 30 in the wintertime. But he learned how to survive at 9 years old out in the wilderness. And so that was something that was inspired by reading that story when I was a little kid. Then it came back 40 years later.
Right.
Well, more than
Uh,
40, 45.
Well, there's a North American U.S. kind of influence there, and then I have to ask about the castle, because I'm a fan of castles. I'm sure living in Germany now. It has some of the most famous castles in the world, but the castle on the river. What can you tell us about that painting in the Imaginary Places collection?
That was just something that I did. I've got a whole bunch of those things that I've been working on as sort of another series of castles here, there, and someplace else. And those are usually really fast. I didn't really have a big story behind that one. I was thinking, this is a castle that a young woman lives in, and she goes out and she plays in the meadow or something like that. But that's really as far as that story got developed.
Okay, cool. So I want to come back, if I may, I'm going to test my German pronunciation. I lived in the country for 2 years, but don't test me. The the Fachwerkhauser collection, that one. I will come back to that.
Fachwerkhäuser.
Okay, that was the
Fachwerkhäuser.
Fachwerkhäuser. So the number 10 one there so those are the timber frame
Mm-hmm.
houses, and there's the number 10 one there has a is a it has the building, and has a yellow door and thing. I know you mentioned that you're it's a whole collection, and it's a bit the stories are a bit different, but there's something does painting those houses take you back to your architecture roots, or you obviously have an appreciation
Yeah,
for that style?
yeah, it does take me back to my architecture roots. I always liked that style of house. I actually lived in a half timber house in Massachusetts that was built
Okay.
200 years ago. Um, you couldn't tell it from the outside because the outside they had redone the covering on the outside of it, but inside you could see the beams in the ceiling and stuff. Um, yeah, it takes me back to architecture school, and I can do some whimsical things, like put a doghouse in and his tail's hanging out of the doghouse or something, or there's cat eyes looking out a window, or most of those paintings have a few lights on in the house. The question is, what's going on in the rooms with the lights on? Um, that yellow door is actually sort of derivative of the Hobbits.
Okay, yeah, I think it was almost circular or something too, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was the idea. Okay, you caught it. Okay, that was the motif. That's where it's coming from. I do those things are reasonably quick. They don't take very long to make. Again, the idea was to sell those locally to tourists who wanted something to remember Bavaria by.
Yeah.
Okay, or actually they started up in no, did they start? They started here. They started here in Bavaria. Is where I started doing that. Um, I'm not sure. I've got three more new ones of those that I like a lot more than the first 12 that I'm going to be posting here shortly.
Okay.
Um, I have a feeling that whole series is going to go in another direction with a lot more storytelling. It just hasn't gotten there yet. sometimes you got to work with something for a while before you see its potential.
Right.
Like I did the second flower painting, which is not yet up on my site. It's on Instagram and it's on my personal Facebook art page. And that one looks really cool. It kind of looks like this plant that can eat human beings or something.
Right.
So I think that's going to turn into a series of like surrealistic science fiction plants or something. But when I started that, I just sort of had a very vague idea. Okay, and I painted the first one of those here in Bavaria in a hotel room I was living in for a month when I first came here to start my life in Bavaria from leaving Hanover.
Mm. So we could just looking at how we probably we can carry on with part three for another few minutes if you want. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned Bavaria, and I know you've been living there for a little while now. You want to tell us a bit more about how conducive is the region where you live now to your creative process, and just how do you
Oh,
feel about living there?
huge, enormous. It's like this is the land of fairy tale castles. It's everything, that you think of Germany. It's not Germany, it's Bavaria. It's much more like Austria or Switzerland. It has almost no connection with northern Germany, real Germany, where I lived for 12 and a half, 13 years.
Uh-huh.
Um, the lighting here is absolutely stunning in the daytime. There's some places in the world, like George O'Keeffe in New Mexico. Holland has just stunning light. The light in Holland at certain times of the day is just unbelievable. Okay, you just look at it, and it's like, God, I can see why people here paint. My God, you have no choice. It's like, who needs LSD here, man? You just walk out of the house, and it's like an LSD trip.
Mm.
Um, Bavaria has that. Bavaria has that kind of light. Okay, it's high up. The altitude here, where I live in Kloster-Lechfeld, is 1,500 feet, 500 meters. If you go down in the mountains, it's a lot higher. That's only 10 miles south of here, and you're in the Alps.
Mm.
Um, the light here is amazing. A lot of the architecture from hundreds of years ago has survived here. It wasn't bombed out by World War II.
Mm.
Um, it's amazing artistically. I mean, there's other aspects of it that can be a little weird sometimes, but it's very different than Hanover. It's like a whole different planet here. And you knew
Yeah.
Hanover, you lived there. That's Prussia, okay? That's Germany. This is
Mm.
Bavaria. Bavaria is not Germany, it's Bavaria. That's why it's called the Free State of Bavaria. And they take that very, very seriously. It's like they have their own country within a country here. It's Catholic, it's not Protestant.
Mm.
Um, you know, there's a dark side of this place from World War II, and you can feel it. You know, I live 8 miles, or not 8 miles, 8 kilometers north of Kaufering. Kaufering had at least 11, maybe 12 concentration camps and more people than Dachau and Buchenwald put together.
Mm.
Okay, it's where Viktor Frankl. This is where he was in Dachau for 3 days. Then they sent him to Kaufering. The book that he wrote, it's written here, eight
Mm.
kilometers from where I live.
Mm.
Okay, if you saw Band of Brothers,
Yeah.
fight, the,
Yes.
where they go into the concentration camp, that's 12 kilometers south of here.
Mm.
Okay, you're right dead center in the land where this all happened. So yeah, it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. Most of the people here are really cool, and there's some Bavarian rednecks that'll scare the living Jesus out of you. Okay, I mean it's Bavaria, man. It's not London, man.
Well, yeah, I lived in Hanover for about 2 years, 1 year with the MBA where we studied together, and then the second year, and then um, we visited Munich for Oktoberfest as you do, and it had a very different feel, even just going down and coming back. It was like another world. It was sunnier down there. It just felt, that was one difference, and the dialect was different as well, even to my ear.
Oh my
Um,
God, I have problems understanding these people. And they can all tell, oh, he's American, but they can also tell, oh, he learned German in Hanover. Right away, they know you learned German in Hanover. You did not learn it here. You're Hanoverian.
Yeah.
They know that in 10 seconds of a conversation because of the way I pronounce words.
Hmm. So Chris, we could talk about the other artworks for a longer amount of time as well. I'm sure. We could pause. We're coming up to probably the natural end for session 3. Happy to come back for a session 4 and we talk a bit more about
All
what
right,
might
let's
be
do.
next.
Are you having fun with this? Do you want to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
another one more session? All right, then let's
yeah.
do one more session, and then we'll try to wrap it up for tonight, I think.
Sure.
And we can watch this worldwide Mick Jagger and Keith Richards play guitar at home thing that's going on the BBC.
Yes.
Which we do get here. We do get BBC broadcasts. Thank God the war is over. Thank God all of that stuff is behind us. I'm really glad we live in the modern world, not in the old one, okay? And I would like to say, I had cancer here last year, and I was treated here in a German hospital in Augsburg, actually 2 hospitals. And the guys who treated me are world-class cancer specialists. I mean, absolutely top of the game, as good as the Mayo Clinic in America. They are absolutely top. And those guys, they literally brought me back to life.
Mm.
And I'm really thankful for that. And it's a weird feeling because it's like I'm one of their big success stories. And with neck cancer, when you have a tumor in your neck, most of the time it kills people
Mm.
in a year. And it
Mm.
ain't pretty either. So I sort of feel like I have responsibility here to actually do more with my life than just go on and, go to work and come home and drink a couple of beers. It's like, yeah, now I really got to produce this artwork, and now I really got to deliver something because there's a whole medical staff of 25 or 30 doctors and 40 nurses that got me through chemo and radiation therapy and 2 major surgeries. So,
we can delve into that. And I'd like, if you're comfortable, we can delve into
yeah, sure.
that next segment, and then we can round up and cover anything else.
Yeah, the question is not if I'm comfortable with it. I'll tell you the truth about anything. The question is if you and the listeners are comfortable with it. That's
Yeah.
your problem, not mine.
So from my perspective, as your friend, you've got so many stories of high highs and tremendous highs and depths of lows. You've experienced everything. You've had a much more varied life than many people have had, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating for me, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity to give people a window into that world. So we'll pause here. We'll come back for part 4, and then we'll pick it up from there.
All right. Sounds good.
Great. Thanks,
All
Chris.
right. Yeah, man.